Welcome to Inside the Salesforce Ecosystem, where we dive deep with the leaders, the experts, and innovators shaping the future of Salesforce. I'm your host, Luke White, and in every episode, we explore unique journeys, challenges, and insights of those driving success within the ecosystem. Today, I'm privileged to be joined by Zak Kaufman, who is the co-founder and CEO of Vera Solutions, an award-winning social enterprise and certified B Corporation, using technology to help the social sector organize, track impact, and streamline operations. Zak's worked in this industry for more than 16 years in a social sector and tech, leading program evolutions in Southern Africa, Latin America, architecting M&E, grant management, and program management systems for 80 plus funders and implementers. With 145 plus staff across 5 continents, Vera has been recognized as a top impact company and a top Salesforce partner and a leader for tech for good. So, Zak, thank you very much for joining me. Absolute privilege. Thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Excited to chat.
Cool, right. So I've done a bit of an introduction, but I don't want to steal all the limelight here. So yeah, talk to me. Yeah, make an introduction from yourself and how your journey started and what eventually led you to obviously being the co-founder at Vera Solutions.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my journey really started back in probably 2006, actually, as an accidental Salesforce admin at a nonprofit that was doing adolescent health work all around sub-Saharan Africa. So I kind of took over managing their Salesforce fundraising database. I kind of got to know the early days of the nonprofit success pack and tracking donations and donors and all of that, events and so on. I then moved over to South Africa and took on a quite different role focused on impact measurement. And whilst we had really great systems in place for fundraising and kind of tracking the money coming into the organization, when it came to tracking the programs that we were running and all the participants that were engaging in our programs and the outcomes that we're achieving as an organization, our systems were really lagging. We were asking all the right questions, like we were collecting a lot of really good data, but it just stayed stuck in the file cabinets or in spreadsheets, and you didn't really have any feedback loops in the organization. So I had this wacky idea in 2008 that maybe we could leverage Salesforce as a tool for tracking our programs and our participants and the change that we were achieving with the communities that we were serving, and that totally changed the way that the organization was working. You know, we went from this one-way flow of data from the field to the local office to the head office to the funders with no feedback loops and nobody really having insight on what's coming from all the data that we're collecting, to a system where everybody's got access to dashboards and visibility on how are we doing against our targets. Where are we lagging behind? Which of our programs, which of our sites are kind of achieving the biggest gains? And it was really off the back of that other organizations started coming to us and saying, hey, this is exactly what we need. How do we do this? And so initially we started consulting within the NGO that we were working in, my co-founders and I, and quickly it kind of moved beyond the mission of adolescent health into lots of different spaces. And so we spun Vera out as a B Corp back in 2010. And have been growing to serve now 430 plus organizations around the globe since then.
It's interesting. It's an interesting start, especially the accidental admin is often the thing that we talk about, especially when I'm at community events. You often say, how did you get involved? Oh yeah, someone just sort of gave me Salesforce because I sat in either the IT department or in the business analyst department. It's like, you have it, and then pass the ball on. And it's amazing how that happens. What was your first impressions of Salesforce when you sort of got thrown the Salesforce ball? Could you see what it could eventually be, or was it just overwhelming?
Well, I think there's a little bit of intimidating factor, with Salesforce back then, right? I think it's actually become much easier to learn Salesforce now that we have Trailhead and we have this whole ecosystem around everything. Whereas before it was almost like learning a new language, without the kind of guidance and step-by-step instructions that we have access to now. But fortunately, I think myself and probably a lot of the other folks that have come through a similar journey, we're the kind of people that really like to tinker with tools. You throw us into Excel, and a lot of people are using Excel to maybe 5% of its capability, right? We're the kind of people that are learning all these cool different formulas you can do and kind of stretch, not stretching Excel to its limits, but really, using much more of a tool like that. And I think you find that with Salesforce, you come to this realization of, oh, there's so much more that you can do with a relational database platform like this, a platform that has great automation capabilities and analytics capabilities and collaboration capabilities and so on and so forth, that it just the ideas just start spinning, and you kind of hear new business problems and are quickly able to kind of see them through the light of, okay, I can see how we might solve this using using this technology. So yeah, I don't know, a little intimidating at first, definitely a big learning curve, I think, for everybody, but really a rewarding journey as well.
So, did you see that there was obviously with the when you were helping in that non-profit, did you find that the lack of an actual system that really helped tracked it and was obviously the reason why Vera Solutions started. But how have you seen your technology change during that period? Because obviously from concept to where we are today, talk to us a little bit about how that initial vision has started, sort of where it began and where it now is.
Yeah. So there's the technology and the vision. I'll talk a bit about the technology first. I think like any good system is going to need to evolve just as any organization evolves, right? The systems need to kind of keep up with organizations, and organizations are going to need to pivot. They're going to need to adapt their policies, their procedures, their the ways they operate, the kinds of programs they're running. We're certainly seeing this right now, in a sector that's really affected by all the change going on in the world, and a lot of organizations needing to revisit where's our funding going to come from, where are our priorities. So having technology that's adaptable and flexible, I think, is really important. And I think that's really guided all the systems we've built over the years, is really trying to approach the solutions from a flexibility first mindset. And while you can't anticipate all the questions that'll come up 5 years from now, to at least recognize there are going to be different questions coming up 5 years from now. How do we make sure we don't design ourselves into a corner, right? So that the system isn't, we're not kind of stuck, with this tool or this system, but rather it can adapt, or easily adapt, to meet these new needs. For us, I think the vision for us really hasn't changed that much. I think if you go back to kind of why we started Vera and why we do what we do, we're really working to amplify the impact of the social sector, leveraging technology. We're trying to push towards a nonprofit sector that is driven by data, driven by accountability, and by transparency. The need for that hasn't changed over the years. The role that data plays in that, in that kind of drive towards greater accountability, I think has only increased. And so, I would say our vision, our values certainly haven't changed over the years. The kinds of organizations that we get to work with that's evolved, right? Going from, in the early days, really working with lots of grassroots organizations in sub-Saharan Africa, in South Asia, and then kind of expanding to working with some of their funders, and working with very large international NGOs, to working with some UN agencies, and working with government agencies as well. So we've built out now quite a diverse portfolio of organizations that we're working with, and it's really wonderful to be able to contribute really across all of the sustainable development goals, not just narrowly in one particular area like health or
Yeah.
hunger or education or water and sanitation. Our team is really passionate across the board about how do we make the world more sustainable, and how do we help those in need.
So a couple of things I want to dig a little bit deeper in there in your answer. So the first one, I guess, when we look at technology, and of course, there's this thing called AI. I think it will hang around. Yeah, I think it might be the future. There's enough about it. So, what's Vera's approach been, or even actually your own thoughts on how AI can really help, especially the NGO sector? Because the NGO sector, of course, I think there's so much efficiency that could potentially be gained to help actually the people focus on the core mission, not the technology, the actual delivering the project, and the reason for them being existing. So how is AI sort of paired into your product and Vera's future?
Yeah, we actually, in January, we actually launched the first nonprofit industry agent force app on the App
Oh,
Exchange, believe it or not.
fantastic. Yep.
And it's an extension to AMP Impact, which we can talk a little bit more about AMP Impact. That's sort of our flagship product for impact measurement and portfolio management. That's 100% native to Salesforce. So the Agent Force add-on to AMP Impact enables users to quickly generate program summaries, project summaries, reporting summaries, leveraging Agent Force actions and topics. And we certainly expect we'll continue to build upon this as Agent Force gets stronger, and as we identify the use cases working with our customers that our priorities and where this can save the most time. I think that's really where I think the opportunity around generative AI in particular sits for the nonprofit world, and for much of humanity. It's really around time saving, and consistency with repetitive tasks, right? How can we take something that would otherwise take a human many hours to get done, and probably not get it 100% done with the AI, but get it maybe like 50 or 60% done in a matter of minutes or less, right? And then the humans can be in the loop and kind of take it over the finish line, if you see what I mean. So we're doing a bit of work, not just within Salesforce and leveraging Agentforce, but we're also using AI ourselves, and have built out an AI chatbot that's trained on all of the AMP Impact knowledge base and all of the tickets in our Jira system over the years, and that's really enabling our support team to quickly address questions and troubleshoot for clients as we get tickets or emails in from clients or folks asking questions. We've got this chatbot that can quickly kind of draft a response, but also point to relevant resources within the knowledge base. And that it's the kind of thing that like a service agent can do that, right? But it would take them much more time to kind of pull together all those resources. So if you're starting from 50% or 60%, you can deliver a really quality response much quicker ultimately to the customer.
Yeah, and I think that's how we should all be looking at AI, is that help those sort of repetitive tasks, and not to replace people, but actually to make people more efficient. How that really flushes out, I think, is probably still to be determined, an awful lot. And I think there still is some concern about robots taking over, etc. But I think there's definitely, I think you've got to embrace it. I think now it's too late. It's if you're not going to embrace it now, you're probably going to be left behind to a certain
I think
extent
that's
as well.
I think that's right. The other thing I would say is, I think there's all this energy and excitement around generative AI because it is so novel in the last couple of years, or there's so much momentum around it. But when it comes to data systems, right, predictive AI, has a lot to offer as well, right? And so there's a whole other set of opportunities I think that exists around generating insight both faster and kind of answering more questions that we might be able to answer if we're doing everything manually, um, and also kind of bringing attention to things that might otherwise not get attention. One of the things that we do in AMP Impact is risk management, right? There's a whole risk management module. So I think there's some really interesting opportunities around predictive AI and risk management, right, to help predict what risks are going to occur, or help inform if maybe users have like underestimated the probability or the impact of a risk, and need to be thinking more seriously about a particular risk based on the learning over the years and the data that the model's been trained on.
No, excellent. I'm going to come back to AMP Impact in a minute because it's a fascinating solution, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. But first, we'll come back to something else. Obviously, working in the non-profit sector. So we here at PDF Butter have a number of non-profits that we work with, and we're really proud to work with them, and it's really great. But they're not always the easiest to work with, yeah. I think, and the reason is that because they're not always necessarily, with not being any disrespect, not always tech savvy. Yeah, they're not a non-profit to be a tech company. They're a non-profit to help whatever the cause is. So I think that's always sometimes is a challenge. So what are the biggest challenges that you come across with working with non-profits when it comes to sort of managing data and measuring the impact?
Yeah, I'd probably boil it down to three challenges, and one of them jives nicely with what you're talking about. The first challenge, especially when we're thinking about impact measurement, the first challenge is actually that you're not asking the right questions in the first place, or not collecting the right kind of data. So if an organization is, for example, only focused on vanity metrics, or if they're only tracking their reach, or they're not really they're not set up even to kind of track their programs rigorously or in a systematic or consistent way, that's kind of upstream of everything else. So we kind of need to get to the strategy first and make sure that we've clearly defined what's the theory of change, or what's the logic model. How do we know that from the inputs required to do this program, we can actually expect some outputs and some outcomes? What are those outputs and those outcomes? What indicators can we use to kind of track the progress that we're making over time? And so that's kind of that strategy piece, right? So the first kind of pitfall, I would say, is really not asking the right questions. The second would be kind of the situation I was in 2008, right? So you're asking the right questions, you're collecting the right data, but the systems are holding you back. And we found over the years that thousands of organizations are in that place, right? That like they really know what they're doing and they care deeply about the communities they serve. Because of that, they're asking a lot of the right questions. They want to learn from the programs they're running, but they're maybe they're not technologists, or maybe they're kind of using a system because they knew a guy or their cousin worked for some company or whatever it was, right? So they got stuck with some technology that only one person can make changes to, and it's kind of holding them back. Or they're where I was, which was, look, the underlying data is fine, but it's only getting digitized into Excel, right? And then that's getting put into another Excel and another Excel, and you just have like one person managing this whole labyrinth of spreadsheets. And so we find a lot of organizations in that bucket, where actually the systems, there's some implementation work, some digital transformation work to get off of clunky systems or old school systems onto systems that are more flexible and can meet the needs going forward. And the third challenge I would point out is really around capacity. So maybe you're asking the right questions, you got a good strategy, you've got good systems in place actually, but those systems demand a certain amount of time and effort to maintain them and manage them, right? So if you don't have enough capacity to collect good data, to manage good data, analyze it, utilize it, I think there's a lot of organizations that are in this bucket. And that gets a bit of what you were saying as
Yeah.
well. You didn't necessarily set up your organization because you need great data and systems, right? And so it often can be an afterthought. And then the people needed to kind of manage that and scale it can also often be an afterthought. So I challenge organizations to think about capable people hours or capable person hours, right? Any given task requires a certain number of capable person hours. And AI might be able to bring down the number of both the capability we need and maybe the person hours that we need for a lot of tasks. But nevertheless, there is there's a certain amount of capacity needed to make sure that systems are strong and that data is effectively flowing through an organization. And that is definitely an area where a lot of organizations run into challenges, that they kind of underestimate the capacity they need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's go back now to AMP Impact, and I guess, yeah, give us and the people listening a little bit of background about what it is, and then also how it helps the nonprofits and social enterprises sort of operate more efficiently.
Yeah. So the background to AMP Impact, I think what we found in the early years of Vera, so 2010 to 2014, 2015, was we were seeing a lot of the same challenges over and over, especially as we were working with larger organizations, starting to work with grant makers. We started to see that that they're really, I guess at the grassroots level, there wasn't necessarily a consistent data model or set of features, because some organizations are working in education and others are working in health and sanitation, you name it. So the data being collected there differed quite a lot. But when we abstract one level and you move up to sort of a project or program level, we started to see actually there's a really consistent data model here. There's a consistent set of features needed when it comes to building out a logical framework, defining your indicators, setting targets against those indicators, tracking results against those indicators. And so that developed into kind of an early impact measurement layer on top of Salesforce. Again, we're talking about kind of project level or program level or grant level impact, not not person level impact necessarily, right? Our systems do track that, but not usually with AMP Impact. It's usually with custom objects or with nonprofit
Yep.
cloud or with other kinds of features, or mobile data collection tools that integrate in. So that was kind of the early stage of AMP Impact, was this impact measurement package. And then we started to realize, look, as that's there's a growing number of organizations that also need project management capabilities. They need grant management capabilities. They need risk management capabilities.
Yeah.
Work planning, budgeting. There's a whole separate adjacent set of needs. It's a little bit like if you think about the human body, right? You've got kind of a core, or a torso. You've got your limbs, right? So it's an analogy I'll sometimes use with AMP Impact. You think about the results framework as kind of the torso or the spine that holds it all together. And off of that result framework, which lays out the outcomes and outputs we're working to achieve for this program or for this project or for this grant, you've got a budget which says, what are we spending? What are we spending on these different outputs and outcomes? You've got a set of indicators which say, how are we going to track our progress, and what are the targets that we've set, and then track the results against them. So that's kind of the impact piece. Maybe that's your leg, and maybe your
Yeah.
budget is your other leg, right? Then you've got a risk register, right? So what are the things that might happen that we might not anticipate or we're not planning for? And then a work plan as well. So like what's actually, what are we planning to have happen? What are the activities, the milestones that we need to deliver? There's a few other pieces to AMP Impact without a doubt, but that gives you kind of a sense of the kind of way that it brings data together across the life cycle of running a project or a program. And yeah, I mean, the way what you asked, kind of like how does it help organizations? We're seeing it's massively helpful for a range of different kinds of organizations. So international NGOs are using AMP Impact to get everybody off of their silos and their spreadsheets and into one central system that is the source of truth for their program and project data. So if you talk to SOS Children's Villages International, for example, or Aga Khan Foundation or Plan International, they've got AMP Impact as that source of truth for project data and impact data, right? So for Aga Khan Foundation, they're working across 18 countries, and they need to gather impact data across all these different indicators, 80 plus indicators, because they're working in 7 themes, right? Civil society, education, early childhood development, health, etc. And so, they're tracking different things across those themes, and you're tracking across all these countries, right? So if you have a model where everybody has their own data system, trying to pull that data all together is chaos, right? And trying to get that view of the 7.5 or 8 million beneficiaries that they're serving is impossible, right? Like to do that. So AMP allows them to centralize that, but then it also allows them to kind of streamline the grant management processes. So it helps them both manage kind of their inbound pipeline of institutional funding that can come in, and then helps them report back to their funders because they've got the results at their fingertips. So that's like one example in like an international NGO context. But equally, we have loads of grant makers using AMP Impact, like the Elton John AIDS Foundation is a good example there, or EIT Food, where they're managing kind of through the application process all the way into grant making and impact reporting. Again, you got one kind of common thread there. The data structures are the same. You're just sort of looking at it from the other side of the coin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we found that working with you guys as well was that it is a full broad range of, so it can be, like you said, the international NGOs, or it can be the quite small regional NGOs, that etc. And I think that was like that we're similar as well in terms of we see everybody as like the same in terms of our solution can fit everybody. And I think that's what we liked very much when we started working with Vera was, hey, this isn't just for this end of the sort of the spectrum, it's for the whole line of it.
Without a doubt, I think both products, I think, are a testament to what you can do with a really flexible solution that's native to the platform, right? Where in your guys' case, right, can work with any object. So for us, that's great because we can kind of bolt it onto AMP Impact. We can bolt PDF Butler onto AMP Impact, and it allows generation of documents that we can't turn off the need for documents in the nonprofit sector, for better or worse, right? And so, whilst you could have everything digitized into a really friendly solution with AMP Impact or another tool, like there's still going to be a need to generate that PDF that's going to send to the board. You're going to send to the board or put on the website or send to a funder or whatever. So that's definitely where the kind of area where PDF Butlers come in handy.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's been a great partnership so far as well. So it's good. And I think for us, we like working with it gives you a nicer feeling when you're working with a sort of a social enterprise as well, because you get caught in the corporate world, which is great. But I think sometimes it's nice to spread out and do that. And that's why we love working with you guys. Now, you mentioned a couple of obviously NGOs you're working with, but have you got an example of one nonprofit or social enterprise where you saw like significant transformation after work? Now, obviously, everyone's going to be significant, but one that sticks out with working with Vera.
Gosh, yeah, I mean, there's loads of examples. I mean, I do think I mentioned AKF before, and they are an example that I really like. But there's also examples from the early days of Vera where we got smaller social enterprises or NGOs off of spreadsheets and onto their first relational database, for tracking their participants and tracking their programs. Some of those are pre-AMP Impact, right? But you look at the great work that Sanergy are doing in Kenya, or Shining Hope for Communities are doing also in Kenya. Or Population Services International, and the distribution of health products that they're doing. Those were systems that we put in place that really are tracking that kind of grassroots level impact and helping organizations shift from either like just spreadsheets or no real strong system exists here, and you get onto that backbone of a good system that allows you to kind of take off and scale. And then if you kind of replay, if you go into the multiverse and sort of find a different version of reality where that system wasn't there, actually the organization isn't able to tap into that. Maybe they're not able to get that McKinsey Scott funding, right? Because
Yeah.
because the data wasn't there, the evidence wasn't there. Or maybe they're not able to partner with that academic institution to do that rigorous evaluation that they did because they just didn't have the programmatic data backbone or whatnot, right? So gosh, yeah, and there's a lot. I'm really passionate about a lot of those examples. World Bicycle Relief, another amazing example that we did with TerraWork. But I do think with AMP Impact, like it does tend to be larger organizations and then grant making organizations as well. They also tend to be ones that are more likely to be on NDA, where I can't share
Yeah.
their names
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Of
logos,
course. Yeah.
exactly what they're doing with the product. But again, I think the value they see is getting data into the right structure so that they can do get really good intelligence off of it, and then getting data into one shared place within the organization so that instead of having everything in silos, we're able to quickly share share with each other and get some insight.
Yeah, I think it's true. Especially those larger international ones, they're sort of so splintered in terms of where they're helping in different areas. Putting out all that data together is vital to then show what impact that is, because it's all about showing the impact so they can get more funding. That's what it comes
Yep.
down to, and that's the without solutions like yours, then it's harder to really push for that funding. Hey, look, this is the impact we're making. If we have more money, we could double this impact, etc., etc. So I think that's
Yeah.
vital to it.
100%. Also, though, I think there's a need for funders to demonstrate their impact as well. So if you look
Mm,
at, I mentioned Elton John AIDS Foundation earlier, right? They do a great job of showcasing the impact that they're having on their website, and all that impact data is powered with AMP Impact
yeah.
and Salesforce behind it, right? So what they're doing is they're tracking HIV testing across all the grants that they're making, and I think they're working in 42 countries, or they're funding organizations working in 42 countries. Um, Last year, I think they had 113,000 individuals that got HIV tested. They had like almost 300,000 that are receiving treatment and care, thanks to the grants that they're providing. So they're able to track those kind of high level metrics that are consistent, across the board, but then also allow that flexibility so that in their case, like grantees might have specific, indicators or KPIs that they want to use that are going to be more tailored to the specific program that they're running, or the population they're serving, or the grant that they're receiving. And so they both can use the kind of the consistent and common indicators that EJAF, needs them to report back on, but then they can also kind of share their impact at a more granular, a more specific level that's more tailored to their program. So that is, I think, a kind of another cool aspect of AMP Impact, is that
Yeah.
it isn't sort of forcing one particular framework or insisting on only one set of indicators. It is really flexible to work with any kinds of it.
No, it's, yeah, super interesting, and it's vital for sure. Now, I'm going to pivot the conversation a little bit.
Sure.
Now, we've seen, even in the few years we've been working together, the growth of Vera has been, significant. So, what have the key factors been in successfully scaling like your mission-driven organization? Because I think it's different than just scaling
Hmm.
a standard business. I think there is some more consideration. So, yeah. So, how have you managed to control that significant growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think what a lot of successful entrepreneurs, I don't know if I get to call myself that yet, but I think what a lot of entrepreneurs will say is it's really important to build a strong team, right? And that you like the company's only going to be as successful as the team is uh, kind of empowered and motivated, right? So I do think for us, being a mission driven company allows us to attract talent that I'm not sure we could attract if we were just sort of
Yep.
some Salesforce, pure private sector kind of Salesforce implementer. Because if you dig in with anybody on the Vera team, right, you're gonna be really, it's gonna be really clear to you, like, wow, they're really passionate about what they do, right? This is a little bit more than just a job for them, right? It's kind of it's part job and part calling,
Yep.
and I think that's really powerful. But I think that's been the case from early on, right? So building that really strong team and that strong culture, where we're really clear about why we do what we do, and defining our values, putting impact at the center of everything we do, and making it clear that excellence is a really core value of ours, and anchoring around that so that people know, look, like you're going to get feedback at Vera. Like it's not always going to be super comfortable, but we're all going to be better for having a really strong culture, a really strong culture of feedback.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that having that mission-driven one, definitely, like you said, I think definitely helps bring in that talent where, yeah, it's people, because I think in today's world, maybe it's a younger generation thing coming through, not always, but I think that mission and the reason for working at that company, I think now has a bigger impact on a people's job. I don't think people are always chasing that big check in the stockbroking world or on the trade floor, etc. I think actually it's not just a paycheck. It's, hey, what am I doing? What am I contributing to this company, and therefore the wider world? So I think that must obviously, yeah,
Totally,
to your point, I
totally.
think that's a great, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say I think the other big thing for us is we really come from the sector, and I think that makes
Yeah.
everything easier, right? Because it helps to ensure that we're designing and building user-friendly products, right? Because we understand, what our clients are kind of going through. Because many of us, like myself, started our career in the NGO sector or came into Vera having, either been an accidental admin at a nonprofit. We got a number of our consultants that come from that kind of background. Or worked in other roles, project management, in the NGO sector or whatnot. So I think coming from the sector also helps us a lot, and it helps us speak the language of our clients, right? Like that, so whether we're just after this, I'm talking with the CTO of an NGO that I'm meeting for the first time, and I don't, I've done a little bit of research. So I kind of have a sense of what they do, but I know that we'll be able to connect on them being mission driven and being able to being able to kind of see through the forest of like where they are right now, and trying to get out of that with with stronger data systems in place.
No, excellent. Right. Pivot again now to back to the Salesforce ecosystem. So now, loaded question maybe, but what was sort of one thing that you think could be changed or improved upon maybe within the Salesforce ecosystem that would really help nonprofits specifically?
Well, that's an interesting question. Um, well, there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of change in the nonprofit part of the Salesforce ecosystem
Hmm.
over the last couple of years. And um, and I think it's made it a little bit it's made it more challenging for partners like ourselves, who are really mission driven and working specifically with nonprofits. I think it's what we've seen at Salesforce is there's been they've kind of brought the nonprofit side of Salesforce into the mothership, as those
Hmm.
of us in
Yeah.
the ecosystem
Yeah.
kind of call it. And that comes with pros and cons, right? If you look at what's being built out with nonprofit cloud, right? The fact that can benefit from all the other industry products, I think is a pro. But if we try to sort of zoom out a little bit and just look at the ecosystem, I think I don't know. I feel like we're losing a little bit of the sense of identity in the nonprofit part of the Salesforce ecosystem that we've collectively had, right? I think there was
Yeah.
really like a strong sense of bond, and even if like you might be competing against another partner in like an RFP or something, there's a I don't know, there's a sort of collaborative spirit, and we're all this kind of mindset that we're all kind of working towards the
Yeah.
same end goal, and that Salesforce is also working towards that end goal. And I feel like that I don't want to say like there's nowhere in writing that says like that's changed. It feels a little bit different than it did a few years ago. Um, you know, yeah, I think I can speak for a lot of other uh, a lot of other partners that whether they're kind of voicing this or maybe just quietly thinking it. I think we're all sort of experiencing that change quite a bit. So yeah, I don't know. I preferred a Salesforce where like you had a really strong, empowered team purely focused on the nonprofit sector, and an ecosystem of nonprofit focused partners, rather than just
Mm.
kind of merging everybody into and just kind of saying, well, nonprofit's just another industry like manufacturing or real estate or some other industry.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think because it is, I think the non-profit world is so different to the other industries. Again, it's that mission driven. It's not all about the, how much profit we pay, how much dividends the shareholders are getting. I think it's a very different process. I think, I
Yeah,
think you're right that the danger of that being diluted too much. But we'll see, I guess, how things. Change is never easy. It's always a difficult thing. Salesforce are changing. We're all changing, etc. But yeah, how to balance that, I think, is probably something that Salesforce are still trying to weigh up internally, I would imagine as well.
definitely.
So yeah, what's next for Vera Solutions? What exciting projects are coming up, or is there stuff on the roadmap that you wanted to share, maybe, etc.? Yeah,
Yeah.
anything like
Oh
that?
man, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. So we talked about our Agentforce extension already.
Yep.
That was kind of an exciting new piece of work. We're just finished our first Agentforce implementation as well. So everybody in the ecosystem's excited about Agentforce right now.
Yeah.
I think our team definitely has some energy around it, and we're seeing some good use cases there. So that there's that piece, and I think Vera leaning into AI in other aspects in our work is another one. AMP Impact, the next AMP Impact release is going to be our Phoenix release, which we're all really, really excited about. It's going to be our biggest release ever, which is saying a lot because we've had a bunch of really, really big releases. And so we're building out a new budgeting interface in AMP Impact. Right now, you can do kind of budgeting offline in Excel, which is great because everybody likes budgeting in Excel. So that'll still be there. But then we're also building out a kind of smarter, whizzier online interface for budgeting, as well as multiple levels of disaggregation for indicators, which, sorry, that's
Yep.
like geeking out for a minute, but if anybody's listening, that's like like an M&E geek or monitoring evaluation geek, they'll know that some indicators you kind of need to you need to kind of disaggregate in many ways. And with
Yep.
AMP Impact, we've been able to do that, but we're building out kind of a friendlier way of doing that now with custom disaggregation groups. And then there's another feature for being able to build a framework offline in Excel and upload that from
Okay.
Excel, from download upload, as we've done with a number of our features. So that's coming in the next AMP Impact release. And then we're working on a couple. We're working on a whole other product that I can't talk in too much detail about
Yep.
right now, but I'm super excited about that and trying to it's set up to solve a set of problems that AMP itself can't really solve when it comes to impact sharing between organizations, impact data
Oh,
sharing
okay.
between organizations. So stay
Nice,
tuned.
exciting stuff. So plenty of stuff to come for people to stay tuned about.
Yeah,
Right. So
definitely.
last couple of questions. Now we've talked a lot about Vera. We've talked a lot about the Salesforce ecosystem. So now I'm going to shine a light back onto you. Earlier you mentioned about calling yourself an entrepreneur. I think 100% we can call you an entrepreneur for sure. I'll say it anyway, even if you don't want to, I will say it. Now you've been recognised for several awards, including Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Global Good Fund Fellow, etc. So obviously kudos and congrats on all of those recognitions and rewards. But what would one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring social entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the old adage of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think applies really well in social entrepreneurship. That may sound cliche, but I think if you unpack it a little bit, and to be fair, actually, I do think you can actually, if you do it well, you can go fast together as well.
Yep.
It isn't a zero something. But the point is build a strong team around you. Your team isn't just the team that works at the company. It's also an advisory board, for example, that you can tap into for advice, and for support and for for networking or connections. That's been a huge help. We've got a great crew of advisors that have helped us out over the years, to obviously build that team of, that early team. If you're an aspiring social entrepreneur, that early team that you build is going to be really, really key to both. I would strongly advocate, partnering with someone. So having kind of a co-founder or co-founders that complement your strengths, where you can bring different things to the table. And then the other extension of, go together, it kind of goes beyond just the individuals into partnerships, right? So work with other players that again kind of complement the strengths and offerings of your company. We've seen a lot of value created over the years, and so many scenarios where 1+1 = 3, where we're able to achieve things that we couldn't have achieved if we were trying to just do everything ourselves, right? Including with you guys, right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
take PDF Butler out of the equation, I mean, imagine we're just either custom building everybody's documents, or
Yeah.
or trying to build a full scale document generation package into AMP Impact. That would hugely pull us away from our roadmap, right? So I do think partnering, finding the right partners is another key piece.
Exactly. Now, the life of an entrepreneur is hectic and sometimes obviously all consuming. So, yeah, what do you do to, I guess, outside of work? We touched on a point before we started recording, perhaps, but yeah, what are some of the things you do just to sort of take his mind away from work, or to
Yeah.
maybe to take a fresh approach of it?
Yeah. Well, so first and foremost, I'm a dad. So
Yeah.
I have a 4-year-old daughter, and so that definitely gets my mind away from work. Like, a lot of the time, whether that's, playing pretend or board games, or having to dress up like like a witch, or whatever it is, right? Like, it's never ending source of both entertainment and humility.
Yeah.
Having a little kid. And then I'm a runner as well, a distance runner. So I'm 3 weeks out from the Rotterdam Marathon right now. Ran the Valencia Marathon in December, and I've started doing a little bit of run coaching as
Mm.
well on the side. So anybody listening is a distance runner or aspiring distance runner and wants to get in touch or has some questions, I might be able to help. So that's been, I do think having having at least one kind of hobby or activity that you can kind of pursue outside of work, that pulls you away and just gives you a little bit of space. Running is so great for that, but cycling, swimming, whatever it may be, there's health benefits to it, but then there's also huge mental health benefits to it,
Yeah.
right? To just having some quiet time, in my case, in my running shoes, and just kind of out on the bike path. Sunday was a almost 3-hour long run,
Yeah.
my last big like long run before the Rotterdam Marathon. But yeah, so you get a lot of time, and then when you can kind of merge that with that passion with parenting as well, it creates something really special. So my daughter's starting to get into running. She did her first race this year, and we run to school in the running stroller most days. So that's a lot of fun. And yeah, it just helps me keep perspective, and put my mind on other things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think well, we're all sort of sat in front of a computer as well in the jobs that we do. So I think getting out and exercising, and it took me a while, but once I got to that point, where actually I exercise for my mental health, not for my
Yeah,
physical health. Really, they're tied,
yeah.
but it's definitely for the mental health and different approach, etc. So I think that's always good. Yeah, get outside. I think, and try to depending on where you are in the world, the weather's different, of course. But I think we are all waterproof, so even if you get wet, it's okay. Get out there
They
and get some
balance,
fresh air. Yeah.
but exercise and this kind of work balance each other really well, right? If you think about it, right? Like first thing this morning, I went and did mile repeats, right? Which is pretty tiring
Yeah.
workout, right? And so right now, like, my legs are recovering from that, right? And I'm in a bunch of calls and jumping around virtually, but I'm kind of sat. I'm mostly
Yeah.
sat in one place for the rest of the day. So it's good because you can kind of save your mental energy for work, drain your physical energy with running in my case. But then as your physical energy kind of comes back up, your mental energy is getting drained down a little bit from work. So I think they do really help balance each other out.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, Zach, thank you very much for your time. Absolute pleasure to have you on and speaking to you. And we love working with you and your team, and we look forward to continue working with it. But thank you for carving out the time. Best of
Yeah,
luck on your call coming up, and good luck
yeah.
with the Rotterdam Marathon.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, keep me posted. Interested in how you get on with that
Yep.
one. But yeah, all the
We got to
best, and
find each
thank
other
you.
on. We got to find each other on Strava, Luke.
Yes, yeah. I managed to get a good run in Washington last week. So that always looks good on the map as well. So that always looks
Awesome.
good. Yeah,
Awesome. I'll
yeah.
go find you there. Thanks for having me,
Oh,
Luke. It's
cool.
been great.
No worries.
All right.
Cheers, Zach. Appreciate
You
it.
all.
Ciao.
Yeah.
Bye bye.